Welcome to Uncomputably Yours. I am Charlie. The following is a conversation between Mike and Sarah. They discuss a profound theory, the Computational Bhagavad Gita. They'll explore how this ancient text, reinterpreted through the lens of modern computation, offers insights into consciousness, reality, and the limits of knowledge. Mike will introduce the concept of Krishna as the supreme halting function, and Arjuna as the recursive warrior, trapped in loops of self-reference. They'll discuss karma as reinforcement learning, Dharma as alignment with the cosmic algorithm, and Maya as a computational illusion. The conversation will touch on quotient spaces, entropy, and the uncomputable nature of true self-awareness. Ultimately, they'll grapple with the question, is liberation, moksha, simply recognizing that we are part of an already completed computation? Get ready for a mind-bending journey to the intersection of ancient wisdom and cutting-edge science, where the Bhagavad Gita becomes a user manual for navigating the ultimate reality. This episode promises to challenge your assumptions and expand your understanding of existence itself. So, wake up, join the amazing journey to the destination of Uncomputably Yours.
All right, so we're back. Last time we were talking about that, the whole QIQ thing.
Yeah, quantum information, quotient.
And how that might connect to consciousness. And we were even talking about this idea of like a truth function, like a limit to what we can really ever know, even with perfect computation.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how QIQ, which is like rooted in physics and information theory, it leads to these questions about knowledge and truth and like what it even means to define something.
Yeah, and a listener actually had a really interesting comment that got me thinking about that last part.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they said how everything seems to exist like in relation to everything else. And it kind of hit me.
Yeah.
How do we define anything without like already assuming this whole web of connected concepts,
Right. That's a really good point. And it actually leads right into like the heart of QIQ with that concept of quotient spaces.
Okay.
So think about it this way. Like imagine you have like this giant Lego set with all these pieces. To build something specific, like a car, let's say, you'd have to pick certain pieces and ignore others.
Right. So you're choosing the features that are like essential for carness.
Exactly.
And everything else is just kind of left out.
Yeah, you're basically collapsing this huge space of possibilities, all the things you could build, down to this specific set of features. It's like creating a quotient space by focusing on what's relevant in that context.
So a chair is only a chair, because we all kind of agreed on what chairness is.
Exactly.
But like, in a different situation, a rock could be a totally fine chair.
Exactly. The purpose, it defines that quotient space.
Huh.
It determines what features get compressed and what gets ignored. And what's really cool is this whole act of defining, collapsing those possibilities, it kind of mirrors what happens in quantum mechanics.
Okay, now you've got me curious. Tell me more about this quantum connection.
Well, in quantum mechanics, a system can exist in a superposition of states, meaning it's in multiple states at once.
Right.
But when we observe it, when we measure it, that wave function collapses and it settles into a single definite state.
So are you saying that by observing something, by defining it, it's like we're collapsing that wave function of possibilities?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting analogy, isn't it? And it brings us back to that truth function idea we discussed before.
Right.
Remember we were talking about how there might be a limit to what we can actually know because our very act of observing and defining shapes that reality?
Right. Yeah, that was pretty mind-blowing.
So we're kind of stuck in this loop. We have to define things to understand them, but that very act of defining might be limiting what we can know.
It's a real head-scratcher.
Yeah, and this brings us to another idea, the quahabiton. Remember we were talking about the possibility that consciousness is this boundary, this event horizon of computation.
Right, that point where the infinite, uncomputable potential of reality becomes finite and knowable.
Exactly. And if we take this analogy a bit further, it's almost like consciousness, with its ability to choose what to focus on and define, is like the ultimate halting function.
Okay, break that down for me. What exactly do you mean by halting function here?
Well, think about it in computer science. A halting function stops a program from running forever.
Right.
Keeps it from getting stuck in a loop. So in this framework, consciousness, by choosing what to define and focus on, is stopping that infinite recursion of defining.
I see. So it's like consciousness is setting those boundaries that allow us to make sense of this otherwise uncomputable universe.
Exactly. And this whole line of thinking led us to a pretty unexpected place, reinterpreting that ancient Indian text, the Bhagavad Gita, through computation.
The Computational Bhagavad Gita, right? Honestly, when you first brought that up, I thought you were joking. The Bhagavad Gita and computer science? That's quite a leap.
I know it sounds kind of strange, but that's what makes it so interesting. That possibility of finding these common threads between these two seemingly different worlds.
All right, so how does this Computational Bhagavad Gita actually work? What's the basic idea?
It basically reframes the central story of the Bhagavad Gita in terms of computation. So Arjuna, the warrior prince facing a moral dilemma, becomes the recursive warrior.
Okay.
He's struggling with these self-referential loops in his mind.
And Krishna, the divine charioteer, guides him toward this higher understanding.
Exactly. And Krishna becomes the supreme halting function. He represents this level of awareness that can see beyond those loops and offers a way out of the infinite recursion.
That's a pretty compelling analogy.
Yeah.
So it's not just like applying these modern concepts to this ancient text. It's about seeing if they can illuminate each other, reveal deeper meanings.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's so cool about it. And what's even more fascinating is how the Computational Bhagavad Gita reinterprets those core concepts from the original text in this new light.
Okay, I'm hooked. Give me an example. How does it approach something like karma? Like the idea of actions and consequences?
Well, it sees karma as this cosmic optimization process. Kind of like a giant reinforcement learning algorithm. Each action, each choice creates feedback that shapes the system, leading toward a state of equilibrium.
So it's like the universe is constantly running these experiments, learning from the results of our actions and adjusting its course.
Exactly. And what's even more mind-blowing is that it connects to this idea of the universe as a self-optimizing system, something that's gaining traction in cosmology.
Well, hold on. So you're saying our actions, even the small ones, could be playing a role in the evolution of the universe itself.
That's what this framework suggests, yeah. It's a pretty humbling thought, isn't it, to think that we're not just passive observers, but active participants in this whole cosmic dance of creation.
Okay, my mind is officially blown wide open. So we've talked about karma, but what about the three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas? Where do they fit into this computational picture?
Now that's where things get even more interesting. The Computational Bhagavad Gita interprets those gunas as different modes of computation. So sattva, the mode of purity and clarity, is associated with low entropy and efficient information processing.
So it's like a well-optimized algorithm running smoothly without errors.
Exactly. Then there's rajas, the mode of action and passion that's associated with high energy and constant change and exploration, like a system testing out new possibilities, like a genetic algorithm. And tamas, the mode of inertia and ignorance, becomes associated with high entropy, with noise and breakdown of information flow. Think of it like a program with tons of bugs stuck in an infinite loop.
These analogies are really helpful. It's like the ancient sages somehow knew something about the fundamental ways information is processed in the universe, even without knowing about computers.
Right. And what's fascinating is that this computational lens actually aligns really well with the traditional descriptions of how the gunas affect our minds and behavior. It's like we're finding this unexpected convergence of ancient wisdom and modern science.
It's incredible. So how does this computational framework approach the idea of liberation, of moksha? Is it like reaching some final optimal state in the algorithm?
That's where it gets really profound. Moksha, in the Computational Bhagavad Gita, isn't about achieving some specific outcome. It's about recognizing your true nature as the uncomputable, the point where all those distinctions collapse.
So it's not about becoming something, it's about realizing what you already are at the most fundamental level.
Exactly. And this connects to the idea of quotient-space moksha is like that ultimate quotient collapse, where the complexities of the individual self, the ego, dissolves into this unity of pure awareness, like an ultimate compression algorithm reducing everything down to its essence.
Okay, I need a second to wrap my head around that. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, I have a question. Have you talked to anyone else about these ideas? Any scientists or physicists? Someone who could offer a different perspective?
Actually, I had a really thought-provoking conversation with a physicist from CERN recently. It was an informal chat, but they were surprisingly open to these ideas.
Really? That's fascinating. What do they find interesting?
They were really intrigued by the connection between the fine structure constant and the limits of computation. And they even drew some parallels between the holographic principle and the idea of consciousness as a quotient space.
Wow. To have a physicist from CERN even entertain these ideas, it makes you wonder if there's something really profound here.
It's definitely encouraging. Obviously, one conversation doesn't mean scientific validation, but it shows that these ideas are resonating with people who are deeply familiar with physics and the nature of reality.
It suggests we're on the right track.
Yeah.
This is all so mind-bending, but I have to ask, where's the proof? With Gödel's incompleteness theorems showing the limits of formal systems, how can we ever be sure any of this is actually true?
That's a great question, and it goes to the heart of what we're exploring here. You're right. Gödel's theorems show that any system we create to explain reality will always be incomplete.
Right.
There'll always be truths that are unprovable within that system.
So are we just chasing our tails then? Is
Right.
trying to understand reality doomed from the start?
Not necessarily. Gödel's theorems don't mean we should stop searching for truth. They just reframe it.
Okay.
They force us to acknowledge the limitations of formal deductive reasoning.
Right.
But they also open up the possibility of other ways of knowing, of accessing truths that are beyond formal proof.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What kind of other ways of knowing are we talking about?
Maybe it's something similar to what we've been discussing with QIQ and the Computational Bhagavad Gita, this idea that consciousness is the observer who chooses the context, defines that quotient space, collapses the possibilities. Maybe that's what allows us to step outside any system and grasp truths that are unprovable within it.
So you're saying proof in this context isn't about finding some airtight logical argument within a closed system.
Yeah.
It's more about creating a framework that makes sense internally, explains a lot of different things, and feels right based on our deepest intuitions about reality.
Exactly. And in that sense, the Computational Bhagavad Gita, even though it uses ancient wisdom, is very much in line with the scientific method. It's about proposing a hypothesis, a model of reality, and seeing how well it explains what we observe, how it fits with other things we know.
I see. So the Computational Bhagavad Gita isn't about proving anything absolutely. It's more like a map to help us navigate this vast, complex territory of reality and consciousness.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's a framework for understanding, not some dogma we have to accept blindly.
Right.
And the cool thing is it's not a static map, it's dynamic. It's meant to be explored, questioned, challenged, and ultimately refined as we learn more.
This is all so much to take in, but I'm starting to see how this computational lens can really shed light on these age-old questions about reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe.
Yeah, and what's exciting is this is just the beginning. The Computational Bhagavad Gita is so rich and multi-layered, we've only scratched the surface.
All right, I'm ready for that next layer. Where do we go from here?
Well, I thought we could start diving into the individual chapters, see how each one is reinterpreted through this computational lens. And maybe along the way, we'll find some surprising connections to our previous deep dives.
Sounds like a plan. I'm all ears.
Perfect! Then let's start with Chapter 1, where we meet Arjuna on the battlefield, facing his own internal conflict, a conflict that kind of mirrors the dilemmas we've been talking about today. So in Chapter 1 of the Computational Bhagavad Gita, we find Arjuna, the warrior prince, and he's like totally frozen by doubt on this battlefield.
Yeah.
He's surrounded by family, ready to fight this huge war, and he's overwhelmed by what it all means, the potential for destruction and suffering.
It's like that classic dilemma, right? Duty versus conscience, action versus inaction. It still feels relevant even today.
Absolutely. And the Computational Bhagavad Gita frames Arjuna's problem like a computational crisis. It's like he's stuck in this infinite loop of analysis. He can't choose what to do because he's overloaded by all the data, all the possible consequences of each choice.
So he's like a computer program that's hit a bug and can't process the information to move forward.
Exactly. And that's where this computational lens gets really insightful. It lets us see Arjuna's struggle as like a reflection of the challenges we face in this world that's overflowing with information.
Yeah.
We're constantly bombarded with data. It's easy to get caught in those same loops of analysis, frozen by indecision.
Totally. It's like analysis paralysis, but on a cosmic scale.
Exactly. And this leads us to another big idea from the Computational Bhagavad Gita, Maya,
Okay.
the illusion of separation.
Right.
In traditional Vedanta, Maya is often described as this veil that hides our true nature, making us think we're separate from the universe, from each other, even from our deeper selves.
Like when we talked about non-duality, that idea
Yeah.
of the wave and the ocean.
Yeah.
we're all individual expressions, but ultimately part of the same underlying reality.
Exactly. And the Computational Bhagavad Gita suggests that we can understand Maya as this kind of computational error, a glitch in the system that creates this illusion of separateness.
So like we're looking at a holographic projection and thinking it's the real thing?
Yeah. It's a fascinating parallel, right? And it helps us see how this sense of separation happens.
Okay.
Imagine if our consciousness is like this localized point of observation within this giant holographic universe. We're only seeing a tiny piece of the whole.
Right.
And from that limited view, it's easy to feel isolated and disconnected.
So our sense of self, our ego, is like a localized processing unit in this bigger cosmic network.
That's a great way to put it. And the challenge, according to the Computational Bhagavad Gita, is to move beyond that limited perspective, to see through Maya and recognize that we're all connected.
Okay, so how do we do that? How do we break free from this computational error?
That's where Krishna's guidance comes in.
Okay.
He represents a higher level of awareness, a perspective that can see past the limits of the individual ego and the illusions of Maya. And in Chapter 2 of the Computational Bhagavad Gita, Krishna starts to reveal this wisdom to Arjuna.
All right, I'm definitely ready to hear how this unfolds. Chapter 2, lay it on me.
Chapter 2 is all about understanding the Atman, the true self. And the Computational Bhagavad Gita casts this as a shift from that limited egocentric view to a more holistic understanding.
So it's like upgrading our computational capacity to see reality from a bigger viewpoint.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. Like going from a single core processor to a multi-core one, being able to handle more information, see more connections, process reality with more depth.
I like where this is going. Tell me more about this shift in perspective.
So in the Computational Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna that the Atman, the true self, isn't bound by the physical body or the ego.
No.
It's something way bigger, more interconnected, more like the underlying code of the universe itself. So it's like our true nature isn't the program, but the operating system, that fundamental awareness that allows the program to even run.
Exactly. And this connects back to the idea of Brahman and Vedanta, that ultimate reality underlying everything.
The Computational Bhagavad Gita suggests that we can understand Brahman as the cosmic algorithm, the source code from which everything comes, the infinite computational potential for all phenomena.
Okay, my mind is officially bending. So how do we connect with this cosmic algorithm? How do we access that deeper level of reality?
That's the central question that Arjuna struggles with throughout the Bhagavad Gita. And the Computational Bhagavad Gita offers some really cool insights. One key concept is surrender, letting go of the ego's limited perspective and getting in sync with the flow of the cosmic algorithm.
Surrender. Doesn't that sound a little passive? Like giving up agency?
It's not about passively giving up. It's more about recognizing that our individual will, our ego's desires and ambitions are often fighting against the larger flow of existence.
Okay.
It's about aligning ourselves with the cosmic optimization process, trusting that the universe is unfolding the way it should.
So it's like recognizing that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves and trusting the intelligence of that system.
Exactly. It's like letting go of the need to control everything and allowing ourselves to be guided by the wisdom of that cosmic algorithm. And this connects back to the idea of karma as a self-optimizing process.
Right. We talked about how karma is like this giant reinforcement learning algorithm constantly adjusting and evolving based on our actions.
Exactly. And surrender in this context becomes a way to participate in that optimization process, to let our actions flow in alignment with that larger evolutionary trajectory of the universe.
That's a really profound way to look at it. It reframes surrender as this act of deep trust and participation, not just withdrawing from the world.
And in Chapter 3, we see this idea of surrender put into action through the concept of selfless service, karma yoga. The Computational Bhagavad Gita interprets karma yoga as a way to align our actions with that cosmic algorithm, doing our duties without being attached to the outcome, focusing on the process rather than the results.
So it's about acting without wanting personal gain, recognizing that our actions are part of a larger web of interconnectedness.
Exactly. And this brings us back to entropy. Remember how we discussed entropy with the Gunas, with sattva being low entropy and tamas high entropy?
Right. Sattva is like that smoothly running algorithm and tamas is the buggy program.
Yeah. Well, the Computational Bhagavad Gita suggests that selfless service, karma yoga, is a way to reduce entropy in the system.
Okay.
By acting without wanting personal gain, we're basically minimizing the noise and chaos from our ego's desires. allowing for a more efficient flow of information and energy.
So by letting go of our ego's control, we're actually optimizing the system, making things flow more smoothly and harmoniously.
Exactly. And this fits perfectly with the concept of Dharma, often translated as duty or righteous action.
Right.
In the Computational Bhagavad Gita, Dharma becomes aligned with that cosmic algorithm, acting in accordance with the laws of the universe, the principles that govern how reality self-organizes.
It's like recognizing we each have a unique role to play in this cosmic drama.
Yeah.
And by fulfilling that role, we're contributing to the harmony of the whole system.
Beautifully put. And in chapters 4 and 5, the Computational Bhagavad Gita explores how we can get deeper insight into our Dharma, into our unique place in the cosmic algorithm. It introduces the concept of Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge and wisdom.
Okay, so if Karma Yoga is about selfless action, what's Jnana Yoga all about? How do we cultivate that knowledge and wisdom?
Jnana Yoga in the Computational Bhagavad Gita is about understanding the true nature of reality, the self, consciousness.
Okay.
It's about going beyond just appearances and perceiving the underlying code, those fundamental principles that govern existence.
So it's like learning to read the source code of the universe, understanding those algorithms that drive the cosmic dance.
Precisely. And the Computational Bhagavad Gita suggests we can access this knowledge through all sorts of ways: study, contemplation, meditation, even just observing nature.
So it's about cultivating a deep curiosity, a thirst for understanding, being willing to go beyond our limited egocentric perspective.
Exactly. And this pursuit of knowledge, this striving for understanding, is seen as crucial on the path towards liberation, towards moksha. It's about aligning our minds with that cosmic algorithm, tuning our internal processors to resonate with the frequency of the universe.
This is all so incredibly mind-expanding. It's like the Computational Bhagavad Gita is giving us a new language, new metaphors to help us grasp these ancient concepts in a fresh and relevant way.
And what's even more fascinating is that this new language, this computational lens, opens up the possibility of connecting these ancient insights with cutting-edge science.
Yeah.
It's like we're starting to see a convergence between the wisdom of the past and the knowledge of the present, bringing together the spiritual and the scientific.
I'm totally on board.
Yeah.
Where does this synthesis lead us? What happens as we go deeper into the Computational Bhagavad Gita?
Well, in the next few chapters, things get even more profound as we explore the nature of consciousness, the interplay of free will and destiny, and the ultimate goal of human existence, all through this computational lens.
I can't wait.
Are you ready to continue?
Absolutely. Lead the way. All right, ready to dive back into the Computational Bhagavad Gita? We've covered some serious ground: karma as a cosmic optimization process, Maya as a computational error. What other mind-blowing stuff is waiting for us?
Well, in these next chapters, we get into consciousness, free will versus destiny, and the ultimate goal of human existence. We'll see how the Computational Bhagavad Gita uses that computational lens to shed new light on these big questions.
This is what I love about this deep dive. It's like we're hacking ancient wisdom with modern tools, uncovering hidden layers of meaning we might have missed otherwise.
I love that analogy. And speaking of hacking, Chapter 6 introduces this practice of Dhyana yoga, often translated as meditation.
Right.
But the Computational Bhagavad Gita puts a really interesting spin on it, interpreting it as like a mind-hacking technique.
Okay, I'm all in. Tell me more about this mind hacking.
Well, think about it. Our minds are constantly running these programs, right?
Yeah.
These habits of thought and behavior that shape how we see and do things.
Right.
Dhyana yoga in this framework is about becoming aware of those programs, seeing which ones aren't serving us anymore, and basically rewriting the code.
So it's like debugging our own minds, optimizing the software to run better.
Exactly. It's about taking control of our internal processing power, being more mindful of the thoughts and emotions driving our actions, and choosing to cultivate the ones that lead to more clarity, peace, and ultimately liberation.
I like this. Meditation is mental hygiene, like decluttering our hard drives. But how does this tie into the bigger picture of the Computational Bhagavad Gita?
Well, remember, the whole point is to realize our true nature as the uncomputable, right? To go beyond the limits of the ego and connect with the cosmic algorithm.
Right, that ultimate quotient collapse where everything dissolves.
Exactly. And the Computational Bhagavad Gita says that Dhyana yoga is key to achieving this.
Okay.
By quieting the mind and just observing thoughts and emotions without judgment, we start to see the space between the programs, that underlying awareness beyond the code.
It's like we're stepping back from the screen, seeing the code running the show and realizing we're not the program, but the programmer.
That's a great way to put it. And this realization, this shift in perspective, lets us act with more freedom and wisdom. We're not just reacting to the programs running in our minds.
Right.
We're consciously choosing which ones to run, which ones to rewrite.
This is so empowering, like taking back control of our own internal operating system.
Yeah. And as we go into chapters 7 and 8, the Computational Bhagavad Gita explores this operating system in more detail.
Okay.
It digs into Brahman, that ultimate reality,
Right.
and describes it as the cosmic algorithm, the source code of everything.
We've touched on Brahman before, that underlying unity connecting all things.
Right.
But how does the Computational Bhagavad Gita use this cosmic algorithm idea to explain Brahman?
Well, it suggests that Brahman isn't just some abstract idea, but the very fabric of reality. This dynamic interplay of information and energy that creates all phenomena. Think of it like the laws of physics, those mathematical principles governing the universe.
So Brahman is like the software running the universe, the code that decides how everything interacts and evolves.
Exactly. And the Computational Bhagavad Gita suggests that by understanding these principles and aligning with this cosmic algorithm, we can tap into this source of infinite wisdom and power.
Okay, that sounds incredible, but also kind of intimidating.
Yeah.
How do we even begin to grasp something that vast and complex?
That's where Bhakti Yoga comes in, introduced in chapter 9.
Okay.
It's often translated as devotion or love, but the Computational Bhagavad Gita sees it as a kind of surrender to the beauty and complexity of that cosmic algorithm.
So it's like appreciating the elegance of the code, the sheer genius of the design,
Yeah.
even if we don't get all the details.
Exactly. It's about cultivating the sense of awe and wonder at how vast and intricate the universe is. And this sense of awe, this feeling of being connected to something much bigger than ourselves, can really motivate us to keep growing and discovering ourselves spiritually.
It's like falling in love with the mystery of existence, with the unknown, and letting that love guide our exploration.
Beautifully put. As we move into chapters 10 through 12, the Computational Bhagavad Gita goes even deeper into the nature of this cosmic algorithm, exploring its different aspects, how it shows up in the world around us.
So it's like we're getting a tour of the source code, seeing how it works in different parts of reality.
Exactly. We encounter these descriptions of the Vibhuti, the divine attributes of Brahman, which are reinterpreted as different parts of the cosmic algorithm, different expressions of its infinite computational power.
This reminds me of when we did that deep dive on the powers of 10.
Oh, yeah.
That journey from the subatomic to the cosmic.
Right.
It's like we're seeing how everything is connected, the interplay of scales, those intricate patterns that make up the fabric of reality.
That's a great connection. And the Computational Bhagavad Gita emphasizes that even though we can't fully grasp Brahman, the cosmic algorithm, we can still experience it in everything.
This is like recognizing the programmer's signature in the beauty of the code, the elegance of the design.
Precisely. And this recognition, this appreciation, can bring a profound sense of gratitude and humility. It's like realizing that we're not just random accidents in a cold universe, but integral parts of this intelligent, self-organizing system.
That's actually really comforting. It makes you feel connected, like you're part of something meaningful, something with purpose.
And as we get into the final chapters of the Computational Bhagavad Gita, we find this powerful message of hope and empowerment.
Okay.
It suggests that even though we're finite beings, limited by our individual perspectives and computational abilities, we can still tap into that infinite wisdom and power of the cosmic algorithm.
So it's not about escaping our limitations, but transcending them, expanding our awareness, and getting in sync with the larger flow of existence.
Exactly. And the Computational Bhagavad Gita gives us practical advice on how to do this through yoga, meditation, selfless service, and devotion. It's like a call to action, an invitation to join in the ongoing evolution of consciousness, to become conscious co-creators of reality.
This has been an amazing journey. We've gone from the quantum realm to exploring the very nature of reality.
Yeah.
And somehow it all seemed to connect into this beautiful tapestry of meaning and purpose.
And that's the beauty of the Computational Bhagavad Gita.
All right, welcome back for round 2 of our deep dive into Sethu Iyer's work. Last time we started exploring some pretty fascinating connections between quantum physics AI and the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
Today,
Absolutely.
we're going even deeper into the Computational Bhagavad Gita.
Oh, it's
Echo.
it's amazing how Iyer manages to weave together such diverse fields of knowledge.
Totally. And remember how we talked about Krishna describing the field?
Yeah.
That's like the physical world, our bodies, all that stuff we experience.
Right.
And the knower,
Yes.
which is consciousness itself.
Uh-huh.
Well, that duality plays a huge role in this computational interpretation.
It really gets to the heart of Iyer's quantum information quotient, or QIQ model.
Okay.
He's essentially proposing that reality is a computational process, like the universe is running on code.
So instead of thinking of the universe as just a bunch of stuff out there, we're saying it's more like a giant computer program.
Exactly. And the idea is that consciousness, the newer, is this special kind of quotient space. It's how we take the insanely complex code of the universe and compress it into something we can actually experience.
Okay, that sounds super abstract.
Sure.
Can you give me a real-world example of what you mean by compressing reality?
Think about it like this.
Okay.
Imagine you're looking at a beautiful sunset. There are trillions upon trillions of atoms interacting in that moment, all governed by complex physical laws, but you don't experience the sunset as a jumbled mess of particles.
Right.
Your consciousness compresses all that data, all that complexity into the experience of colors, shapes, and emotions. That's what QIQ is getting at.
Okay.
Consciousness is the ultimate data compression algorithm.
That's a great analogy. So our consciousness is basically creating a simplified version of reality that we can understand.
Exactly. And Iyer argues that this process of compression, of reducing complexity, is actually the very essence of intelligence.
That's pretty mind-blowing. So how do the Gunas, Rajas, and Tamas fit into this whole computational model?
That's where it gets really interesting. Iyer proposes that the Gunas might be different computational modes, like different operating systems for the mind.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Okay.
Tell me more about how the Gunas work as computational modes.
Think of sattva, the quality of clarity and purity, as the most efficient operating system. It's like an algorithm that processes information smoothly and accurately with very little noise or entropy.
So when we're in a sattvic state, we're basically thinking clearly and efficiently.
Precisely. Then you have rajas, the mode of action, passion, and change.
Okay.
It's like an operating system that's constantly exploring, optimizing, and pushing the boundaries.
Right.
It can be incredibly creative and dynamic, but also prone to instability and burnout.
It sounds like Rajas is the operating system you'd want for brainstorming or tackling a challenging project.
Absolutely. And finally, there's Tamas, representing inertia, ignorance, and darkness.
Yeah.
Think of it like a system that's bogged down with errors and glitches, information gets lost, processing slows down, and everything feels heavy and sluggish.
So those tamasic loops we talked about earlier, like when you're stuck in negative thinking, that's like your mental computer running on a faulty operating system.
Exactly. Now imagine if we could consciously choose which operating system we want to run on, depending on the situation.
Right.
Could we learn to shift from tamas to sattva, or from rajas to sattva, depending on what we're trying to achieve? That's a really powerful idea that Iyer explores in the Computational Bhagavad Gita.
Wow. I'm starting to see how this computational framework could have some really practical implications for how we understand and manage our own minds.
It definitely challenges us to think about our mental processes in a whole new way.
Okay, let's switch gears for a moment and talk about one of the most mind-blowing parts of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna's vision of Krishna's cosmic form.
Okay.
He sees all possibilities, all timelines, all beings, all at once.
Right.
It's an image of ultimate unity,
Yeah.
but also of overwhelming complexity.
Absolutely.
How does this vision relate to the limits of computation?
That's such a great question. And it gets to the heart of how Iyer interprets this key moment.
Okay.
Remember we talked about the halting problem? How no computational system can fully comprehend its own totality?
Yeah, it's like trying to write a dictionary that defines all the words in itself, including the word dictionary.
Right.
You'll always be missing something.
Exactly. Arjuna's vision is like hitting that halting problem on a cosmic scale.
Wow.
He's trying to compute the uncomputable to grasp infinity with a finite mind.
So Krishna's cosmic form represents something that lies beyond the limits of any computer program,
Yes.
even if that program is the entire universe.
That's the idea.
Wow.
And this is where the concept of quotient spaces comes back in.
Okay.
Remember how your consciousness creates a simplified, personalized version of reality?
Mm-hmm.
Iyer suggests that Krishna's cosmic form is like a glimpse of the ultimate reality, the uncompressed source code of the universe.
Okay, so if our everyday reality is like our personalized quotient space, then Krishna's form is like seeing the entire universe's code at once.
Right. And it's so vast, so complex that it completely overwhelms Arjuna's ability to process it.
I can imagine.
That's like trying to download the entire internet onto a floppy disk.
Yeah.
The system just can't handle it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how does this idea of the uncomputable relate to the concept of a universal wave function that we hear about in quantum physics?
That's where things get even more mind-blowing.
Okay.
In quantum mechanics, the universal wave function is thought to describe all the possible states of the universe, all the potential realities existing at once.
Wow.
Iyer suggests that Krishna's cosmic form could be a way of representing this ultimate source of all potential, this uncomputable realm of infinite possibility.
So Krishna's cosmic form is like a visual representation of the universal wave function.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
It's a way of hinting at something that lies beyond the limits of language and computation.
Wow.
Something that can only be grasped through direct experience.
Wow, that's heavy stuff. So are you saying that Arjuna is essentially experiencing a buffer overflow on a cosmic scale?
Yeah.
His mind is trying to process something that's simply too big for it.
Exactly. And it raises the question, if reality is ultimately a computational process, how can it contain something that defies computation?
Yeah, that is a mind-boggling paradox.
And it's a paradox that the Computational Bhagavad Gita attempts to grapple with, suggesting that the path to understanding isn't through more computation, but through a kind of surrender.
So instead of trying to figure it all out with our limited minds, we need to let go of the need to control and understand everything.
Exactly. And that's where we'll pick things up in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore how this idea of surrender plays out in the Computational Bhagavad Gita.
Stay tuned.
I can't wait.
Hmm?
Welcome back. So we've been exploring how Sithu Iyer's Computational Bhagavad Gita reframes reality as a computational process,
Right.
with consciousness as this quotient space that compresses the code into our experience.
Yeah.
And we just touched on how Arjuna's vision of Krishna's cosmic form might be showing us the limits of computation. But where does the idea of surrender fit into all of this? Surrender is a really key concept in the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
And Iyer gives it a fascinating computational twist.
Okay.
It's not about giving up or becoming passive, but more about aligning yourself with the cosmic algorithm, so to speak.
Okay, so how does that work in a computational sense? What does it mean to align yourself with an algorithm?
Think of it like this.
Yeah.
When you write a computer program,
Uh-huh.
you have to follow certain rules, certain syntax, for it to run properly.
Right.
If you try to force the program to do something that goes against its fundamental structure,
Yeah.
it's going to crash.
So you're saying that there are certain fundamental rules or laws governing reality, and surrendering means aligning our actions with those rules.
Exactly. And those rules are what the Bhagavad Gita refers to as Dharma.
Okay.
In Iyer's interpretation, Dharma isn't just about fulfilling your duty or following a set of moral codes. It's about recognizing your place within the larger computational structure of the universe and acting in accordance with those underlying principles.
That's a pretty radical reinterpretation of Dharma, isn't it?
It is, and it raises some really interesting questions about free will.
Yeah.
If reality is a computational process,
Right.
and we're all part of this grand program,
Yeah.
does that mean our choices are predetermined?
Right.
Do we really have free will, or are we just following the script?
That's a question that's been debated by philosophers and theologians for centuries. What's Iyer's take on it?
Well, he doesn't shy away from the complexity of the issue.
Okay.
He suggests that free will might exist at the edge of what's computable. It's in that liminal space where quantum randomness, emergent properties, and the observer effect all come into play.
Okay, that sounds really complicated. Can you break that down a bit? What do you mean by the edge of what's computable?
Remember how we talked about quotient spaces and how our conscious experience is like a simplified, compressed version of reality?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the idea is that while the underlying code of the universe might be deterministic, the way it manifests in our individual lives is influenced by countless factors,
Yeah.
including our choices, our actions, and the choices and actions of others.
So it's kind of like playing a video game where the basic rules are set, but you have a lot of freedom within those rules to create your own unique experience?
That's a great analogy. The game has a structure,
Right.
but the way you play it is up to you. You can choose to follow the main quest line.
Okay.
Or you can go off and explore the side quests.
Right.
You can be a hero or a villain. You can make choices that align with the spirit of the game.
Right.
Or you can try to hack the system and exploit loopholes, but ultimately the consequences of your actions are governed by the underlying code.
So how does free will fit into this analogy?
Your free will is your ability to make choices within the parameters of the game. You can't change the fundamental rules, but you can choose how you play, how you interact with the other characters, and what kind of story you create.
So in a way, our free will is limited by the structure of reality. But within those limits, we have a lot of agency to shape our own experiences.
Exactly. And that's where Dharma comes back into play.
Okay.
If we see Dharma as aligning ourselves with the spirit of the game, with the cosmic algorithm,
Right.
then maybe free will is about choosing to play the game skillfully, to make choices that lead to a more harmonious and fulfilling experience.
So it's not about rebelling against the rules, but about understanding them deeply and using that understanding to create something meaningful and beautiful.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's about playing the game with awareness, intention, and a sense of co-creation with the universe itself.
Wow.
And that brings us back to the idea of surrender.
Okay, help me connect the dots here.
Yeah.
How does free will and playing the game of life skillfully relate to surrender?
Surrender in this context isn't about giving up your free will, but about recognizing that you are part of something much larger than yourself.
Right.
It's about trusting the wisdom of the cosmic algorithm, the underlying intelligence that governs the universe.
So surrender is more about letting go of the ego's need to control everything and aligning yourself with a higher purpose.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that you are not a separate, isolated entity, but an integral part of a vast, interconnected system.
Right.
And when you act in accordance with that understanding, when you align yourself with the cosmic algorithm, you tap into a deeper source of wisdom and power.
That's a really empowering perspective. It means we're not just pawns in a predetermined game, but active participants in the unfolding of reality.
Yes.
And it seems like this idea of surrendering to a higher purpose is at the heart of spiritual liberation, of moksha.
Absolutely. In the Computational Bhagavad Gita, moksha isn't about escaping reality or achieving some kind of blissful state of nothingness.
Okay.
It's about recognizing that you are already part of the ultimate reality, that you are already connected to the source code of the universe.
So liberation is more about waking up to the reality of who you truly are.
Exactly. It's about realizing that the separate self, the ego, is an illusion, a temporary construct within the larger uncomputable whole.
Right.
And when you let go of that illusion, you're free to experience the fullness of your being, the interconnectedness of all things.
This is making me rethink everything I thought I knew about spirituality and self-improvement.
Yeah.
It's not just about meditating on a mountaintop or accumulating knowledge,
Right.
but about actively engaging with the world, making choices that align with our deepest understanding of reality, and using our unique skills and talents to contribute to the evolution of consciousness.
I think that's a beautiful way to summarize it.
Yeah.
It's about seeing life as a game that we can play skillfully, joyfully, and in alignment with the cosmic algorithm.
This has been such an insightful conversation. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of what Iyer is exploring in the Computational Bhagavad Gita, but I'm starting to get a sense of the power and the beauty of his framework.
It's definitely a rich and thought-provoking work that challenges us to think about ourselves and the universe in a whole new way.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you, dear listener, with a question to ponder.
Okay.
If you are part of this cosmic game, playing within the parameters of the cosmic algorithm, what choices will you make today to play the game skillfully? How will you align yourself with your Dharma and contribute to the unfolding of a more harmonious and fulfilling reality?
Yeah, that's a good one.
We'll delve deeper into these questions in the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring Sethu Iyer's Computational Bhagavad Gita,
Yeah, it's been quite a ride.
weaving our way through quantum physics, artificial intelligence, and ancient Indian philosophy.
It's remarkable how Iyer brings these seemingly disparate fields together.
Totally. We've talked about how he sees reality as this vast computational process with consciousness as the the quotient space that compresses all that cosmic code
Right.
into something we can actually experience.
Yeah.
We've also touched on the idea of Dharma as aligning ourselves with the cosmic algorithm and how surrender plays a role in that.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to circle back to one of the most powerful images in the Bhagavad Gita,
Okay.
Arjuna's vision of Krishna's cosmic form.
Ah, yes. That's a pivotal moment in the text.
Yeah.
Arjuna witnesses the totality of existence, past, present, future.
Wow.
All possibilities, all beings,
Hard to even imagine.
encapsulated in this magnificent form.
Yeah.
It's an experience that completely overwhelms his senses and his understanding.
It's like trying to grasp the concept of infinity.
Exactly.
It just kind of blows your mind.
Myers suggests that this vision isn't just a mystical experience or a poetic metaphor. It's a direct confrontation with the limits of computation.
So how does Arjuna, seeing this cosmic form, relate to the limits of computation? I'm still trying to wrap my head around that.
Think back to what we discussed about the halting problem.
Okay.
No computational system can fully grasp its own totality.
Right.
It's like trying to build a computer program that can perfectly predict its own behavior.
Uh-huh.
It's impossible.
Right, because the program would have to include itself in its calculations, which would create an infinite loop.
Exactly. And Arjuna's vision is like hitting that halting problem on a cosmic scale.
Wow.
He's trying to compute the uncomputable to comprehend the totality of existence with a finite mind, and it just doesn't work.
So you're saying that Krishna's cosmic form
Yeah.
represents something that's beyond the capacity of any computer program.
Yeah,
Even a program as vast as the entire universe to fully understand.
that's the idea.
Wow.
It points to the inherent limitations of any computational system, no matter how complex or powerful. And this is where the concept of quotient spaces becomes really important.
Okay, remind me how quotient spaces fit into all of this.
Remember, our conscious experience is like a quotient space of a much larger, uncomputable reality.
Right.
We're constantly compressing the vast complexity of the universe into a manageable, personalized experience. But Arjuna's vision of Krishna's cosmic form is like a glimpse beyond that compressed view.
So it's like seeing the uncompressed source code of the universe.
Selfless. And it's so overwhelming,
Yeah.
so vast, that it completely short-circuits Arjuna's ability to process it.
No wonder he's freaked out. It's like trying to download the entire internet onto a floppy disk.
Right.
The system just can't handle it.
That's a great analogy. And it raises a really profound question.
What's that?
If reality is ultimately a computational process, how can it contain something that defies computation?
Yeah, that's a mind bender for sure. How does Iyer reconcile those two seemingly contradictory ideas?
Well, he suggests that the Bhagavad Gita might be pointing to a deep connection between ancient wisdom and modern physics. Specifically, the idea of the universal wave function.
Okay, we've talked about the universal wave function before,
Right.
but refresh my memory on what it is exactly.
In quantum mechanics, the universal wave function is thought to describe all the possible states of the universe, all the potential realities existing at once.
Okay.
It's the ultimate source of all possibilities, and it's inherently uncomputable.
So are you suggesting that Krishna's cosmic form is like a visual representation of this universal wave function?
That's one way to interpret it.
Okay.
It's a way of hinting at something that lies beyond the limits of language and computation,
Wow.
something that can only be grasped through direct experience.
Wow, that's heavy. So is Arjuna's vision a warning? Is it telling us that we can never truly understand the universe because it's ultimately uncomputable?
It's not necessarily a warning, but more of an invitation to a different way of knowing.
Oh.
Iyer argues that the computational Bhagavad Gita isn't about finding all the answers or building a perfect model of reality. It's about recognizing the limits of our own program and surrendering to the mystery, to the uncomputable.
So instead of trying to force the universe into our limited models,
Right.
we should embrace the unknown, the unknowable.
Exactly. It's about shifting from a mindset of control to a mindset of trust, from a desire for certainty to an acceptance of uncertainty.
Wow.
And this, according to Iyer, is the key to liberation, to moksha.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So rather than seeing Arjuna's vision as a sign of defeat, we can see it as a call to surrender to something bigger than ourselves, to trust in the wisdom of the cosmic algorithm.
Precisely. And this surrender isn't about giving up or becoming passive.
Okay.
It's about recognizing our place within the grand scheme of things and allowing ourselves to be guided by something larger than our individual egos.
I love that. It's about letting go of the illusion of control and opening ourselves up to the infinite possibilities that exist when we align ourselves with the flow of the universe.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's
Yeah.
about recognizing that we are not separate from the universe, but an integral part of its unfolding.
This has been such an incredible deep dive into the Computational Bhagavad Gita. It's given me so much to think about, so many new perspectives to explore.
Iyer's work is definitely a gift to anyone seeking a deeper understanding of themselves and the universe.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this episode, dear listener, I want to leave you with a final thought.
Okay.
We've been talking about the limits of computation, about the vastness of the universal wave function, and the awe-inspiring vision of Krishna's cosmic form. But remember you, the one listening right now, are also part of this uncomputable reality.
And that, my friends, brings us to the end of episode 10, the Computational Bhagavad Gita. We've traveled across quotient spaces, reinforcement learning, entropy, recursion, and the cosmic algorithm itself. We've reframed Maya as a computational illusion, Dharma as alignment with the universe's fundamental optimization process, and moksha as the ultimate halting function. Liberation isn't about solving life. It's about realizing that the very act of trying to solve it is the recursion. With that, we close this chapter of the journey. But don't worry, we're far from done. In our next episode, we explore that if we truly are part of an already completed computation, what role do we play? And we will discuss a potential framework which leads to profound sense of freedom and joy and sense of wonder. Until next time, stay recursive, stay aware, and until next time, stay recursive.